أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب من شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون فتعالى الله الملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. ومن يدعو مع الله إلها آخر لا برهان له به فإنما حسابه عند ربه إنه لا يفلح الكافرون. وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. سلام على نوح في العالمين إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك، وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك، وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. 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 اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت. أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت آخذ بناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث من عذابك أستجير. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في ديني ودنياي وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وأمن روعاتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وأنت تهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا بك نموت وعليك نتوكل وإليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم وخير ما فيه وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله بحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق السماء، سبحان الله عدد ما خلق الأرض، سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك، سبحان الله عدد ما خالق. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء، الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض، الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك، الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء، لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض، لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك، لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء، الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض، الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك، الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء، لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض، لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك، لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم. أنذر أباءهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون، وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولا يمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردنا الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة. قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أن حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين. ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون. هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون. لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون. سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون. ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين. لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون. وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون. ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون. واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون. لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون. فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون. أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين. وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم. قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون اللهم إنا نستحفظك ونستودعك أدياننا وأبداننا وأنفسنا وأهلنا وأولادنا وأموالنا وكل شيء أعطيتنا اللهم اجعلنا وإياهم في كنفك وأمانك وعياذك من كل شيطان مريد وجبار عنيد وذي بغي وذي حسد ومن شر كل ذي شر إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم جملنا بالعافية والسلامة وحققنا بالتقوى والاستقامة وأعذنا من موجبات الندامة إنك سميع الدعاء اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وأولادنا ومشايخنا وإخواننا في الدين وأصحابنا ولمن أحبنا فيك ولمن أحسن إلينا والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات يا رب العالمين وصل اللهم على عبدك ورسولك سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وارزقنا كمال المتابعة له ظاهرا وباطنا في عافية وسلامة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. We now turn to page 6 in our book. We're reading selections from Fath al-Bari. Yesterday we skipped that. We did the 8 in 8, which is the 8 things that Allah hid in 8, and we had a lot of discussion on the concept of hiding and why would Allah Ta'ala hide something, and the great value of the idea that Allah Ta'ala never creates an effect without creating its cause, and when He creates its cause, the cause itself has great wisdom. So we oftentimes look at the effect and imagine that the cause is either Allah does it directly or something else, as if the cause, the tools, the means that Allah uses to create something, to bring out an effect, is somehow independent from Allah. And that's just a common mistake that our minds might slip into. Nothing is independent of Allah. The cause itself is part of the divine decree. So that we said yesterday that Allah has created from His wisdom that life is made out of water. It's not like it's either water or it's Allah. And the biologists and the scientists, they make this mistake all the time. They say, oh, we don't need God anymore because we discovered why. We discovered the actual cause. Like we discovered a law of gravity, or we discovered that, how what happens exactly when a baby is produced in the womb. We say to them, so you could discover all that all you want. All that does is magnify the glory of Allah Ta'ala, because He's creating these causes, and there's a wisdom behind creating these causes. And this is why the awliya, when they realize this, when they live in that state, in the realization, and it's an everyday realization that Allah is the creator of the effects and the causes, that's when they started to realize how creation happens. And when they started realizing that if He's the creator of the causes, and I find myself persisting in a certain behavior or a certain dua, I can almost know now that Allah desires this effect to exist, because He's creating this cause, because the cause is repeatedly happening. And so if they look at their dua as backwards. When the arifina billah make dua, and Ahlullah, when they're making dua, They don't think that I'm making dua as an external autonomous force that's trying to influence Allah. This is how we might look at dua as mistakenly, really. Okay. But the arifina billah truly understand the nature of cause and effect and who's the creator behind all causes and effect. And they realize, hold on, if I'm inspired to make a dua for something, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe this is Allah sending me a message. I'm creating this. And I'm giving you a heads up so that you could be fully aware that this is going to be created by me inspiring you to make that dua. So that's how the arifin look at things. If you find yourself inspired, and they trust their heart and they trust their instinct because their instincts are pure. Once you purified yourself from sins, and this is so important, to get rid of an-nafs al-ammara bis-su' and an-nafs al-lawwama. The nafs al-ammara bis-su' is the soul that commands you to evil. Nafs al-lawwama is the soul that it's not there yet. It's sometimes it commits sins and sometimes it does good. And if you're in the nafs al-lawwama, firstly say alhamdulillah that you're not nafs al-ammara, right? So let me just explain this for the non-Arabic speakers. The nafs, of course, is the soul. We know that. Ammara it's a nasty commanding soul to evil. Okay, it's not a good trait, right? It's a soul that commands to evil. Lawama is it constantly blames itself. Why is it constantly blaming itself? Because it's constantly falling short of the state that it's supposed to be in. So if you find yourself as somebody to be, I really want to do the good, but I still have some bad habits. And these habits can be different from each person. I mean, person who grew up outside of any Islamic behavior, it could be a Muslim too, by the way, any Islamic influence, their nafs lawama, they could be really good one day and next day they get drunk. They could be really good one day, next day they commit zina, right? And they're just oscillating back and forth. And you're wondering, what am I? Am I a hypocrite or something? What is going on with me? That's what you might think of yourself. You're not a hypocrite. You're a normal human being. You're going, your ego, which is your nafs, yourself, you're undergoing a change, a real change. And the fact that you exist in this back and forth, and year one, year two, this is like 5-6 years of this back and forth, that's a sign that your positive change is good, because your positive side hasn't left. It's persisting. But change is not linear. We are not the sun and the earth. Okay, when you look at the sun and the earth, the change from night to day is a linear change. It's a predictable change. We're not predictable creatures. Okay, our behavior is not predictable, and no two human beings are alike. You go out there and you look at the stars, they all behave in the same way, right, relative to the earth. We're not like this. And we take time and we have a back and forth, and we are the greatest creation of Allah Ta'ala. And that's why the angels and the demons, they revolve around the human being. The angels to serve us and the demons to dislodge us. The demons don't care about dogs, cats, mountains, stars, or planets. The angels don't care about that. And we don't revolve around anything else. And when we do, we've destroyed ourselves. We revolve around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels, they serve us. They exist for our sake. I mean, not all of them, but most of them. The demons, they're supposed to revolve around Allah. They're obsessed with us. They're obsessed with the human being. So we're not linear creatures like the sun coming up. Every day it's going to come up the same way. In our perception, of course, we do know that it's the earth that revolves around the sun. But from our perception, the sun revolves around us. The sun rises and the sun sets. It's not going to be what happens to a human being when they go from zero good habits to trying to purify their soul. It's just not the way that life is. So if you find yourself in that state, what do? Nothing. You're crossing a desert. You're just going to keep going. You have only one rule to observe, which is There's only one cardinal sin for the nafs al-lawama. You don't give up. No, you can go 8 years that you can't get rid of your drinking habit, your marijuana habit, your gambling habit, your zina habit, your pornography habit. You can go 15 years. It could be 20 years. That number is not for you to determine. Okay? We don't understand the nature of the nafs or your nafs. Your job is not to give up. And if you find yourself persisting, then you can say, this is the cause that Allah has always created for this effect. Okay? For the effect of someone, the result of someone moving from the nafs al-lawama to a nafs al-mutma'inna. Al-mutma'inna is the soul that is at peace because it no longer contradicts itself. We no longer say Islam, Islam, and then we behave nafs and demons and zina and garbage, right? We no longer have this contradiction anymore. So we're at peace because there's no contradiction. There's no tug of war anymore. Okay? Between that and that, the cause that Allah always creates, uses to create this transition is persistence. Okay? So if you find yourself possessing the attribute of persistence, you should be happy. You should know that now it's just a matter of time. And a matter of time doesn't mean days, months, and years. It could be days, it could be hours, it could be years, it could be decades. But if you are persistent and you refuse to bow out of the fight, then you're in good hands. You're in a good situation. All right. So this is what we talked about, and the idea that the awliya, they have recognized that just like if you find yourself ready to drink water, you can know that Allah Ta'ala has willed the effect of being satisfied, of quenching your thirst. If you find yourself, it's in quiet evening and you're going to sleep early, you can trust and truly believe that Allah has willed the creation of the effect of restfulness. And then now, in your life, it's just a matter of learning more of Allah's sunnah, His sunnah in the creation, His way of creation. So now, if you want to know what your future looks like, I wonder what is willed for me. What is Allah willed for me? It's very simple. Ask yourself, what is it that's on your tongue all the time? What's on your tongue consistently? When you make sujood, what is consistently coming out of your mouth? That's how Allah creates. So now I could know, in a sense, what is His willed for me. And in another sense, I can almost do that myself now. If I know that it is through repeated dua that Allah creates a certain effect, then I could do that myself then. And I say, oh Allah, if this is good for me, then bless me with consistency in this prayer. That's how you know if it's good for you. Then Allah may turn you away from it. He may keep you on it. He may cause you to forget it, right? But if you find yourself 3, 4, 5 months, 1 year, 2 years, and my mouth keeps uttering this word, you know that this is the beginning of creation, that He has willed for that. But we recognize that He also willed the cause, right? And that's such an important and amazing topic. When you see the rise and fall of empires, you see that no empire enters indulgence except for that its days are numbered. Its time is numbered. It's going to be a finished empire very soon once it is engaged in indulgence. Okay? Indulgence is a terrible thing. And when you see the opposite, the rise of empires, really always happens after a repeated period of frustration and oppression. And if you see empires that or nations that go nowhere, they're empires that are neither well off nor oppressed, right? I don't think anyone in the world, is sensing that Chile or, Argentina has a huge, is on the radar. They're not on the radar at all, right? Neither are they well off, nor are they oppressed. Like no one's ganging up on Argentina. Who's on the radar right now? It's Islam. And that's a sign that Islam is the future because we're on the radar. It doesn't matter good, bad, or ugly. It doesn't matter that we're on the radar in being ideologically attacked. It doesn't matter. It matters that we're on the radar because this is not the case in the 80s. And many people who are young or converts, they might not know this. All through the 70s, 80s, and then you go into the 90s, Islam was not a thing on the radar. Islam made it on the news one time a year, which was CNN. They got a Muslim name, I think his name was Riz Khan, and they would send him out to Mecca because he's the only Muslim who could go to Mecca. And they get a local Saudi cameraman, and they film 15 seconds on the Hajj. And that's they would air that when there's nothing else going on. Okay. I think anyone from the 90s remembers that, right? I wonder what that journalist is doing. He's like the first Muslim journalist we ever saw. That was it. Believe it or not. That was the only airtime Islam got. But once we started getting airtime, it's on everyone's tongue. It doesn't matter good or bad. It's on your tongue. The enemies are talking about Islam. Regular people, they're aware of Islam. And of course, the Muslims are aware of Islam, right? So part of Allah's creation is that when people are always thinking about something, good, bad, or otherwise, that is a sign that that thing will come out in the future. It has an affair in the future. And the sign that Allah does not want something to come out is people ignore it. When was the last time you talked about, the status of the Russian Orthodox Church? Never. Nobody cares. Right? It's not in the news, good, bad, or ugly. So this is all about observing. And if you are observant, you'll start to connect the dots. Every time this effect comes, I notice that this cause was there too. So that's how Allah creates it. This is the knowledge of his name, Al-Khaliq. How does he create? And what is the commandment to do this in the Quran? Undur kayfa bada al-khalq. What a beautiful ayah. Look at how he began creation. Does that mean look at how he began the earth and the universe? Yes. But look at how he begins all the creation. He didn't say the creation of the heavens and the earth. He says the creation. When Allah creates something, he first creates attention to it. Everyone's paying attention to it, good, bad, or ugly. Okay. When Allah creates the death of a nation, he always creates indulgence first. So if you see indulgence, that's a problem for that nation. Before indulgence, well, what exists before indulgence? He never creates indulgence unless he first creates resounding victory. That no, you are untouchable. There is no way anyone can take you down. That's the precursor of indulgence. So once you get there, actually, you think you've succeeded. That's the beginning of the end. And there are some nations that I'm thinking about now that have this attribute. No one's touching you. If that's the case, proceed with that for a little bit longer. What's going to end up happening is you're going to be indulgent because there's nothing else to do. I have no enemies. What do I do? If you had no bills, no work the next day, what are you going to do? You're going to indulge. You're going to eat, sleep, entertain yourself, unless you had a religion to tell you to do something otherwise or a habit, right? You're just habituated to some discipline. But habituated to discipline, that habit will die eventually. The next generation won't care about it. And if you have a religion, you have to keep it up. Right? In any event, all that was just a revision of what we talked about yesterday, the ever important topic that Allah creates causes alongside outcomes. And we have to keep our eye open for the causes as well as the outcome and look for that pattern. I read now to you from hadith number 7. in this book. I don't know what this 7 stands for because we're reading our first hadith. So uh, page 5 says 6412/1, and now it says /7. So that's probably the reference in Ibn Hajar's Fath al-Bari. It doesn't matter for us, so we're just reading. This is a new hadith that says, إنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر. This life of this world is nothing but games and play and adornment and showing off. وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. And it's increase in having wealth and children and people just comparing each other. وتكاثر بينكم في الأموال والأولاد. Ibn Atiyah said, what is meant by the life of this world, hayat dunya, in this verse relates to the conduct that is uniquely for this world. This verse does not apply to acts of obedience or to indispensable means of livelihood or anything done for the sake of Allah. So anytime that the dunya is mentioned, we're only talking about the dunya insofar as a person has forgotten Allah. But as long as one's intention involves the obedience of Allah in some way, shape, the remembrance of Allah, even what is the least of the remembrance of Allah is that when you do something halal, you know it's halal and you say it's halal. The Prophet ﷺ, he spoke about a person makes haram haram and makes halal halal. And the Sahaba asked, O Messenger of Allah, we know how we can make haram haram. It means I know that it's forbidden, so I avoid it. But what does it mean to make halal halal? It means the Prophet ﷺ says he does it while remembering that and believing that Allah permitted it. Okay. So that's something important. So when you're engaging in something for your own self-interest, how do I give that some kind of a blessing from Allah? I accrue some kind of a blessing by saying, I'm doing this. Allah has permitted it. Alhamdulillah that Allah permitted this. I'm doing this only because Allah, I'm only able to do this because Allah permitted it. If He had made it haram, I wouldn't have done it. Just by that belief inside your head, and you're talking like that inside your head, you've blessed it. Yeah, or you've called upon Allah's blessing for it. So he says here, the image invoked by this parable is that of a man who is born. He grows strong. He gets rich. He has children. He becomes a leader of the community. But then he starts getting older and he begins to decline and his hair grows gray and he weakens and he becomes ill and his health and money fall prey to various forms of affliction until he dies, so that his body melts away and his property passes to others. Hence he resembles a piece of land on which rain falls, brings up the splendid and attractive fruits and plants, and then when the autumn comes, it starts to fade, and when the winter comes, it's completely dead and it blows like dusts into the wind. Okay? I want to say that there is an average way in which human beings live, but you're not bound by the average. So what's the average way that human beings live? You work up, you're so strong in the 20s, it's almost like the summertime, right? Then your 30s, you're pretty strong as well. Now, from 30 to 40 is a maturation process. Once you hit 40, from 40 to 50 is the climax and the height of most people's knowledge, energy, and achievement. From 50 to 60 now, it's less work and more reaping the results. You're almost like on autopilot. So whatever successful mechanisms you put forth between age 40 and 50, now you start reaping the results of that, right? Once you hit 60 now, you're in the autumn of your life, and it's deep autumn now. So you start to become honored. You start to be someone who's like a legend in the community, and people respect you, and you have to put much less effort, right? But you're also heading towards the end. and then from 70 to 80 is waiting. Basically, you're now a veteran. You're pretty much out of the picture, but you're there for the blessings of it. Okay. And you wait after 80, you're just at that point, you're just waiting to die. This is the common pattern of human life. We're not bound by that. Allah and His Messenger did not say you have to do this. It's not what happened to Sayyidina Musa, for example. It did not happen with Sayyidina Ibrahim. Of course, Sayyidina Nuh, they lived a completely different, equation of life. They lived way longer. We're not bound by this. He's just saying this is the average of how human beings live. This is not even mandub. It's not even like recommended. Okay, so I'm 40, I'm going to be strong now. 50, I'm going to take my foot off the pedal a little bit. 60, I'm going to take my foot off more. And 70, I'm just going to make myself a completely irrelevant. I'm just going to be like one of those people who sits on the chairs at Jummah and people feel sorry for him. And they just go say Assalamu alaikum, smile so that they can get some blessings. And as if I'm so pathetic that a mere smile from a stranger is going to lift my spirits. I mean, that's how we treat the elderly, right? Oh, just go say Assalamu alaikum. You think that he's in such a pathetic state that he cares for your salam? That's going to make his day, right? Don't belittle the elderly. Seriously, they're not all, sometimes we belittle them. Is it just a blessing machine? You come touch me and leave. You think that's going to do me anything? Yeah, that actually may be the case for many of them, but don't disrespect them. They still have their intellects. They believe that they have something to say, right? And we should respect that. So keep that in mind, because when we're older, do you want to be that? But to be honest, when the Muslim youth do this, it does feel good. Even if they do that, at least they're respecting their elders. At least they have an aqeedah that the dua of the elder has so much impact. Even if you're 40 and a 20-year-old comes up to you, that has an impact. That 40-year-old is going to, feel that you're really well-mannered. And he might take you into consideration for future benefits. It could be jobs. It could be other recommendations, etc. Right? But we're not bound by this. And a person does not have to feel that when I hit 50, I should just start receding from life. It does not have to be like that. It's really your choice. He says here, according to Al-Farra, the reciter may not pause after the words adhabun shadid. Anytime that there's a word that is of a painful torment or a painful punishment, it's highly preferred not to stop there, because it's a negative, right? It's a negative. So it's highly recommended to continue the recitation into the verses of forgiveness and end. For example, if you're praying, you don't end the rak'ah. You don't end the rak'ah and go down into ruku'ah on a verse of adhab. You should find the verse of forgiveness and go there. Right? That's what we should do. Or at least not adhab, not a verse of torment. Okay. And on top of that, the verses of torment are meant, our behavior for them is to be scared of them, but is also to believe that Allah's revelation for them are not for the pious Muslims. Is the revelation of, for example, when Allah says, وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ, they plot and Allah plots. And he's threatening, and he's got a plan. He's going to plot against you. You want to play chess with Allah, you're going to lose. That's not for a pious Muslim to start thinking, okay, Allah's plotting against me. Right? Oh, this is a trap. I want to get this car. I want to go to this university. I want to marry this woman. I want to get this job. Oh, Allah, help me get this job. Oh, wait a second. Maybe I'm making this dua because I'm walking right into a trap. And I was so upset one time when I heard a popular Arabic-speaking preacher. He's very good. But this one thing was a terrible mistake. And I asked my shuyukh about it, and they said, that's a blunder. He said that Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam asked for a son, and he had to witness Sayyidina Yahya, his son, be beheaded. So Sayyidina Zakaria was asking for something that hurt him, right? Now, you know that this is a terrible, terrible mistake that he made. Why? Because you're basically saying that Allah plots against and uses the prayers of his prophet against his prophet, right? He kept saying, Yad'u al-mar'u bima yanqusu. A human being prays for something that will hurt him. You think you know better now than Sayyidina Zakaria? Sayyidina Zakaria was praying for a son for over 70 years. He was praying for an heir. You don't think that Allah cares that he would have removed this prayer from his mouth if it's going to harm him? Sayyidina Yahya was not a harm to Sayyidina Zakaria. He did witness his son being killed. It may be the wisdom why Allah Ta'ala delayed the coming of Sayyidina Yahya so long, because Sayyidina Zakaria died shortly thereafter. So he only had to live with that memory and that vision of his son being beheaded for a short period of time. But for a person to now imply that a pious praying Muslim, oh, your prayer may be a plot against you, you may be walking into a trap, it is extremely wrong on so many levels, because now you've deflated all of us. I won't turn to Allah then, right? And by the way, not turning to Allah is also a choice. It's not like I'm choosing something or letting Allah choose. By inaction is also a choice, right? Inaction is a choice. It's like someone who says, I'm not going to vote because I don't care, right? I really don't care. Well, no, you care enough to make the decision not to vote. So that is an action. So the only true inaction is that based on ignorance, like that you didn't know it was time to vote. That's inaction. But for you to stay home, and by the way, I don't have an opinion on voting most of the time anyway. Like, in other words, I'm not for or against. I think there's arguments for both sides, right? But leave that aside. Inaction, by decisive inaction, is a decision. It is an action. You chose to stay home and not pull a lever. So that's a philosophy. That's your philosophy. That's fine. But don't say, I just don't care. No, you do care enough to make that decision. So you've come to the conclusion that this is better for you, right? So for someone to say, oh, don't pray and just leave it for Allah, that's also a decision. So you are choosing that. You're making that choice. So this man, may Allah forgive him, because a lot of people watch those videos and they're repeated all over the place because he's a good preacher. But he made that one claim, which to me, I think you should take it back, because if you deflate everyone when you make a Muslim perceive that Allah is plotting against him at all times. No, the plots of Allah Ta'ala, right, is for those who plot against his religion or against other people. Okay. لا يحيق المكر السيء إلا بأهله. This ayah in the Quran which says that the false plot only affects the one who plotted it. Right? Secondly, many people say, quote the verse that وَيَدْعُ الْإِنسَانُ بِالشَّرِّ دُعَاءَهُ بِالْخَيْرِ. The human being prays for evil, thinking it's good. Okay, that's definitely true. Why would you apply it to yourself? On what basis do you know that your own dua is evil? So many people say this. Heard this so many times. Oh, I'm praying for this. Yeah, but, maybe evil. Well, maybe good. It's 50-50, right? So let's leave it for Allah to decide, right? I'm not going to not progress in life starting to imagine that everything's possibly evil. Why not imagine it's also possibly good, right? Husn al-dhanni billah is a sign of truly knowing Allah. If you truly understand Allah, you have a good opinion of Him. And that's the truth. When you have a good opinion of Allah, that's the truth. Okay. So in any fork in the road where I could be optimistic about something and believe that Allah is being good to me, He's doing something great for me. Or maybe it's a plot. Maybe it's a trick. You always go with the first one. You always go with the good opinion of Allah, and that's the truth about Him. If you go the bad route and you choose to believe, yeah, it's a trick, it's a plot, you're not believing that about Allah. You are reflecting the wickedness of your own nafs, of your own sins coming back to haunt you. That's how the sins come back to haunt people, is by them having su'id dhanni billah. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الظانين بالله ظن السوء عليهم دائرة السوء وغضب الله عليهم. Those who have a bad opinion of Allah, that's what they're going to get, and Allah ta'ala is angry with them. Therefore, it's only by this person's sins that he has a bad opinion of Allah. Right? So when a person has a bad opinion of Allah, you should know this is the precursor for the outcome of receiving His wrath. We said that if you see someone drinking, you know that Allah is going to create the quenching of his thirst, right? If you see someone having a bad opinion of Allah, then you know that the wrath of Allah is coming to that person. We never have a bad opinion of Allah Ta'ala, that He's always plotting against us. And why would He plot? Why would you plot against a loyal employee, right? And there's no analogy between humans and Allah. But if you're a loyal employee, you think that the boss is going to plot against you? No. You think Allah plots against a righteous Muslim who repents when he commits sins? No one is perfect, but when you commit sins. So be very careful of this idea, this fear. Oh, Allah's plotting against me. Everything I do, I'm walking into a trap. Wait a second. Why would you worship such a God? If a genuine, honest person, and then Allah makes a trap for them, no, this is such a wrong belief. You have to make sure, if you ever feel and hear that in the back of your mind, eliminate it immediately. He says here, after citing the hadith, Sayyidina Imam al-Ghazali, in his Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the religious sciences, some people say that it's the greatest single book written in all the history of Islam. Of course, there are usually two camps: the camp that favors Ghazali, which is the bulk, I would say, all Hanafis, Malikis, Shafi'is, and many Hanbalis, and the camp that supports Ibn Taymiyyah, who was the rival in terms of opinion. They were completely opposite spectrum, Ibn Taymiyyah and Ghazali. You'll always find a preacher always quoting one or the other, and very rarely both. Most of the Hanafis, Malikis, and Shafi'is will lean towards Al-Ghazali, and the Hanbalis, and then other groups like Salafis, who we hope that they can join up with the Hanbalis, because it's more legitimate. It has a sanad, and it has a manhaj that is established, and has arbab, leaders of the madhab. But they always would tend to support Ibn Taymiyyah and his views of things. In any event, Al-Ghazali says, know that in their forgetfulness, the people of the dunya are like a group of people sailing on a ship. When they come to an island and disembark to relieve themselves, the captain warns them, don't be late, go to the bathroom and come back, and instructs them to remain only as long as necessary. Okay. Let he raise the anchor and sail set without them. Heeding this, some of them hurry back quickly, and hence they find themselves able to sit in the best and most comfortable parts of the ship. The others, however, behave in different ways. Some become entranced. Wow, look at this island. There's flowers, and there are coconuts, and all this, and there are sweetwater streams that you could drink from. All sorts of neat things here. Okay. But then they remember, oh, shoot, time to go. And then they go back, but they don't have the best seat on the ship anymore. Right? But they're still okay. A third group get so involved and they start, oh, look at the caves and look at this and look at these flowers. And they start gathering as much as they can. But then when they reach the ship, they barely find any uncomfortable places and they have to leave everything that they took anyway. There's no room for that stuff. So they're upset. All that stuff and the few flowers that they took, they die and they fade away. Right? Now there's another group. This group got deep in the jungle and they forgot about the captain's advice altogether. So when they hear the horn of the ship leaving, they rush back and they find the ship sailing away without them. And they're maroons with what they had collected until they all perish. Okay. So others are so obsessed with gathering good things that they're even deaf to even the sound of the ship. Okay. Of these, some are eaten by wild beasts, others by poisonous snakes, and they wander around aimlessly until they die of hunger. This class resembles the people who live solely for hayat dunya, this lower world. They're preoccupied with its mortal pleasures, and they live in heedlessness of their future. How repulsive is the man who claims to be intelligent and full of insight, and yet is deluded by gems, silver, and gold, and by flowers and fruits, nothing of which will accompany him to his destination. All right. Let's open up for our Q&A now. See if anyone has any comments or questions. That closes out that entry in Fath al-Bari. So let's see how we're doing here in terms of the chat, the live chat. All right, we have salam from a number of people. G Spice 71, Kenza Adhkar, Norfolk 1, Sia Jabi, Nazli Iqbal, Saliha M, Brampton, Canada, Ammar Mahmoud, Double A, Shar Patel, Izo. Okay, Alicia is giving some summaries here. Can someone share the book? Okay, this is a booklet called Fath al-Bari, selections from Fath al-Bari, translated by Abdul Hakim Murad. It's a very short book, only 42 pages, and you can probably maybe find it on Amazon. Saliha M says, if we don't understand the nature of the nafs, then why are we so judgmental? Is it to protect ourselves? We have a problem, all of us, called projection. We project and imagine that everyone knows what we know. Everyone desires what we desire. Everyone fears what we fear. Everyone feels what we feel. And that's one of the human problems, is projection. Okay. Projection is one of our problems, and we shouldn't project. That everyone's experiences are our experiences. Everyone's desires are our desires. This is one of our big mistakes. And once we can get ourselves out of projection, then we'll find ourselves so successful with human beings. And many parents, when I look at frustrations between children and parents, the main problem is the parent is projecting. The parent feels that they love something so much, they cannot imagine how their kid doesn't love it. Or they hate something so much, or they appreciate something so much, they cannot understand how their kid doesn't appreciate it. Okay. And there's a term that's really important for people to know. It's unaware competence, or you could say, that's really one of the best ways. It's not a pretty sounding phrase, but it's the unaware competent. He's competent, he's successful, but he's not aware of what got him to success. So he can't reproduce it in his kids. And he oftentimes ruins his kids. So a guy was poor and he goes rags to riches. And then he's got all this money. And then he says, I don't want my kids to be poor the way I was when I was young. So he lavishes wealth all over his kids. Credit card, take it and pay whatever you want. Don't even look at the card. All right, the price tag. All right. Work, no, I don't want you to lift a finger because I hated work. So this is a fool. He doesn't realize that the idea that you had to be on a budget, the idea that you had to work, for the concept that you had to strive. And in the hours working a mundane job making pizzas or hamburgers, in that time that you spent, that's where your dream was born. Because you sat there and you said, am I going to flip burgers and slice pizzas all day for the rest of my life? I want something great. And you see the customer comes in and you wonder, what is that customer doing? What is that person's life like? I'm sure their life is better than my life, right? This person was competent. He went from rags to riches. He doesn't even know how he got there. So he can't transmit that to his kids. So he projects. He just imagines that everyone is feeling what he's feeling. And that's why they don't know how to raise successful kids. I mean, I can't say I did that either because I'm still doing it. But from my understanding, that's what happens. When they deal with other people, they assume everyone had the same life experience as them. So I think that's the philosophy of why people are judgmental. It's because they project. Okay. It's projection. And once you start realizing that no two lives are the same, and you start to really just look at yourself and see that you're very forgiving of your own sins. Why am I forgiving of my own sins? Because I know where I'm coming from. So somebody who, for example, um, New Yorkers, they always justify their harshness. It's, it's very crammed in New York. Everyone's scrapping. And that's why the whole tri-state is like this, right? New York, New Jersey. That's why we're rough around the edges. And we're rough around the edges because, it's a tight, there's so much competition. You go to New York, you can't even park, right? It's a frustration just to park. You finally get something, they steal it's to take an arm and a leg from you. The cost of everything is so high, right? You want to apply for a job, there's 100 other people applying for the job, right? You want to make a deal, everyone's swindling everyone else, right? You try to buy a house, everyone's trying to screw you over. And so that's why we're all, a bit harsh and, quick with our tongue and blah, blah, blah. Though, this is how we are. So because you understand your background, you laugh at your defects. So wait a second, why don't you try to extend that to others? You extended it so generously to yourself. You're so generous to yourself because you understand yourself. So why won't you be so generous to people you don't understand? Which is that sometimes good people make terrible decisions. But they have a reason behind it. It's not a justification. We have to understand this. The reason is not the justification. Just because you have a reason for something doesn't mean it's a justification for it. So a woman who's never been able to get married, she's extremely frustrated in life, and then she marries someone who is maybe even haram to marry. Maybe he's not a Muslim, right? Maybe, she was treated so harshly in her life that the first kind man she just head over heels for him, right? Is that a justification? Absolutely not. Are we supporting her in that? Absolutely not. But do we understand why she behaved like that? Yeah. Once you understand why someone behaves the way they do, it's a good thing because now you can treat them with some mercy. And the moment you're angry with someone, you cannot benefit them. You can only be angry with someone before they do the action. That's going to work. So, hey, listen, I'm thinking of maybe marrying this non-Muslim guy. there you could be angry because you might stop them from doing it. Once they've already done it, being angry with them is going to release your own hate, anger. It's not going to benefit them. If you truly want to benefit them, then you have to observe two things. You must distance yourself from what Allah Ta'ala forbade. You cannot celebrate this. You cannot attend. You cannot give a gift. And you got to explain it. Listen, this is against I can't support this. Please don't ask me to support it. Right? Don't ask me to do something I can't do. In every other thing, I'm here for you. Like, I have a good opinion of you. You've always been great. We're friends. But don't ask me to do something I can't do. Right? And that's the way we treat such a person. And they would understand. They should understand. Right? And if they go this route, oh my gosh, you didn't support me, then this is not a friend. This is someone who refuses to see your point of view. Because you can only be friends with someone who sees your point of view as well. Wait, what about my point of view? My point of view is that I have a religion here, right? My point of departure is that I have limits. Why don't you respect my limits? Why do you expect me to respect your decision, but you're not respecting my decision to take the Sharia as my law and Muhammad as my prophet, right? So if there's no mutual respect and it's just assumed to be one way, then you know that you don't have a friendship. Okay. You have a one-way relationship, which is not good. The tongue is a manifestation of what is in the heart. Saliha says, and the good news, it's also the opposite. It's two ways. The tongue, like what they call the Freudian slip, the tongue reflects what's in the heart. But guess what else? The heart is affected by what is on the tongue. If you continuously do dhikrullah, you will love Allah. If you continue to laud up business and wealth, your heart will love money. If you keep talking about Hollywood and actors, you will love movies. The more you talk about a thing, you will affect your heart. And this is good for us because if I want something, it has to be in my heart first. If I want to succeed in health, in hifd al-Quran, in making money, in marriage, then it has to be in your heart first. It has to be firmly rooted in your heart. Well, how do you firmly root it in your heart? By talking about it, by praising it, by saying good things about it all the time, repeatedly. It will, over time, enter inside of your heart. And once it enters your heart, then it's inevitable that your body will move into action and find a way. You will find a way to achieve this goal. If something is truly in your heart, then there is no giving up. Because something that's truly in your heart, you never give it up. How can we become a positive signpost towards Islam on a personal level as Islam is on the radar? Well, we talked about that judgmental character. I think that's actually really important because the world has become such a harsh place. And I think that we should not participate in that misery of, everyone's saying, everyone's being really rough with everyone else in the world. It doesn't mean we don't have principles and that there's a time and certain people to be rough with, right? Like Modi, for example, what he's doing to the Muslims in India or what's happening to the Palestinians is not something that they don't deserve kindness. They won't benefit from kindness. But the regular people in the world, I think that the Muslim, if we can be less of a judgmental and harsh character with individuals, it's better for us, I think. That's the best way without going against our principles. Someone here has some food for thought, and they say, what time does Adhkar usually start? Did I miss it? Adhkar starts 15 minutes after Fajr, and then we go for an hour and 20 minutes because that takes us to Ishraq,
which is now around 6:20 a.m. And then we pray 2 rakas and then we're done. And that has the reward as long as you stayed in the same spot and you stayed upon wudu and you didn't engage in worldliness and you just like either listen to the dhikr or listen to this talk, then that has the reward of Hajj, believe it or not. And in another hadith, Hajj and Umrah. So that's the blessing of sitting from Fajr all the way to Ishraq. And that's what we do here. And that's why I look at the clock and we go around an hour and 20 minutes after. It's 20 minutes after the Fajr is out. So 20 minutes after Salat al-Fajr is over, you just add 20 minutes. Alicia says, when making istikhara, what are the signs that one should look for? When you make istikhara for something, you look for ease. That's the sign of it. Because if you look at the dua of istikhara, that we are saying, yassirhu li, make it easy for me. So if you see that something that you're praying for or working towards or seeking to have in your life, after praying istikhara, it got easier. It's easier to do, easier on your heart, easier for you to do. You're good to go. Keep going. But if you find all sorts of obstacles coming in your way and it's heavy on your heart, then Allah wants you to maybe do something else. And that you feel that letting go of this thing was a relief, then that's the sign that Allah does not want it for you. Is good opinion of Allah based on what? Our thoughts? It's based on His promises. That's a good question. Having a good opinion of Allah, it is based on our thoughts, but it's based on His promises. What is His promises to the pious? Doesn't He promise the pious that He'll save them, that He'll be with them? So, and we know what piety is. Piety is avoiding haram and fulfilling obligations. That's the first level. Second level, try to avoid the discouraged and try to do as much sunnahs as you can. Third level, everything that you do, try to remember Allah in it. Make it an act, make it a rewardable act. 3 levels of piety. So I can say that to my ability, to my knowledge, I was pious. I tried to avoid. I'm not describing myself as pious, but I'm saying my behavior, I tried to avoid the haram. Like, we can't say a judgment about ourselves, but we can say what we tried to do. Otherwise, well, we go crazy. And I do know that I prayed on time. I made sure not to delay the prayer. I made sure to check that there's no pork in the ingredients. So, oh Allah, I tried to do all these things. So now I take you up on your promise that you said, if we do this, you'll save us. If you do this, you'll be generous to us. That's husn al-dhan. Now, everything that happens, I start interpreting it in that light. Allah's being generous with me. Allah's being kind to me. Allah's saving me. I always interpret it as He's doing it for me. Does the average mean to be content of one's lot in life? We should not be content. We should be happy. Don't be content. Discover more about this world and this life, because by doing so, you're actually discovering more about Allah. Content is someone who sits, does nothing. He accepts the status quo. Why would you do that? That's the way of animals. Cats have always wanted to eat mice. They accept it. That's it. They never change. We, as human beings, we need to discover. We need to be moved. We need to be inspired. You can't be inspired if you are convinced yourself that the right thing to do is to sit and just accept. Why? Go discover. Look what Dhul Qarnayn did. He went east and west, right? He didn't stop. Allah gave him the ability to do this. We also have imagination. We have a world now that is opened up. It's really opened up. There's so many opportunities. And this doesn't mean just accumulating dunya. There are opportunities to do a lot of the opportunities to study. There's opportunities to improve the way your health. There's opportunities to improve your spirituality. There's opportunities to be financially independent. This is an age where you can open a business and be your own boss. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you rather work with someone? And don't take the scared view of life, because the scared view of life is the worshiper of the past. I call that type of person, he worships the past. Why? Because he had one bad experience in the past, and all he does is he lives his entire rest of his life to avoid the repetition of that experience. So who's his master? His past. And don't be like that person. His past is his master. Because I had one bad experience in the past, well, let me guess what? The past is dead. There is no past. It doesn't even exist anymore. So for you to live your life, I'm just want to make sure we don't repeat that. And many people, they spend their entire life, decades, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they realized, oh my gosh, my entire life, I just spent it trying to avoid the past, trying to avoid, that this repeats itself. There's no way to live, because we're not the worshippers of the past. So the says, are we going to produce something like Al-Ghazali's masterpiece? I don't believe that. I think that the age of book authorship is pretty much done, mainly because we're no longer in the age of reading anyway. We're really more in the era of service. This world that we live in, it doesn't need much more religious knowledge. It's there. We have it. But what we need is service. That's what we need more than anything else, in my opinion. Wallahu alam. All right, folks, it's now time to wrap up, because we're now 20. Let's see what the ishraq is here. I think we way past it. Let's look at one of these apps. These apps are getting more and more annoying, because these prayer times apps. You click and you have to wait for the ad to pop up. Sunrise was 6:19, so technically not yet, but we'll wrap up by the time you go make it to your prayer corner, and you can make dua as well for the rest of the time until 6:39. It's now 6:33, so that's oh no, sorry, it's not 6:33. That's the dhuhr in 6 hours and 33 minutes. That's what my app is telling me. It's 6:24. So that gives us about 15 minutes. You could do some dhikr, you should make some dua, but for our purposes, we'll close the halaqah portion of our morning. So jazakumullahu khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
طرقت باب الرجاء والناس قد رقدوا وبت أشكو إلى مولاي ما أجد طرقت باب الرجاء والناس قد رقدوا وبت أشكو إلى مولاي ما أجد وقلت يا أملي في كل نائبة ومن عليه لكاشف الضر أعتمد أشكو إليك أمورا أنت تعرفها ملي على حملها صبر ولا جلد أشكو إليك أمورا أنت تعرفها، ما لي على حملها صبر ولا جلد، وقد مددت يدي بالذل واقفة يا خير من مدت إليه يد، فلا تردنها يا رب